I said I would update the slideshow, and there you go. See, I got it. I got it updated. I don't know how I feel about it. I need to adjust some of the proportions or the aspect ratio or something like that on the photos. But either way, you got photos from the Syracuse game. There's Isaiah Neal celebrating after the game, and you can check those out as we go through today's show. Tuesday becoming one of my favorite episodes of the Morning Pitt, one of my favorite days of the week. I got a lot of favorite days of the week. I mean, Friday's my favorite day of the week is everybody's favorite day of the week. But I like it because it's the day of our Morning Pitt mailbag here. I like Thursdays a lot because Thursday is the day we have the Pat Narduzzi sit down, probably my favorite press conference of the week, just because it's a little more candid, a little more conversational. We can get into some different topics with Narduzzi, and I think that's always an interesting one, and I look forward to those. Probably my favorite press conference. Although, you know what? I was reminded, like, this week and last week as we started getting into some basketball stuff, like, Jeff Capel's press conferences are really good. Like, not to get off on a side tangent here, but, like, Jeff Capel's press conferences are usually pretty good. And like, I always felt like it was a possibility. I always felt like it could be good. I always felt like his press conferences could be good those first couple of years, but they were just losing so much that I was like, man, if this guy could ever win, he would be a great interview. But he was always mad because they were always losing, and he didn't really want to talk about things. Those couple of years, like the year they made the NCAA tournament, when they were really winning and doing well, we would go in there on like a Thursday afternoon and talk. He would talk for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, just kind of, on a lot of topics. And we would talk about the team, but we would talk about, he talked a lot about his history, his experience as a player at Duke, and, just kind of what he went through there. And it was interesting stuff, fascinating stuff. And so I hope, people often ask me, like, do I root for Pitt to win? I hope Pitt basketball wins because Jeff Capel is a much better interview when they do, and he, can kind of get into some topics, and we have some good conversations. So always looking forward to that, and I look forward to getting back into that this season. But during the football season, favorite interview of the week is those Thursday Narduzzi sit-downs. So, I like Thursdays for that. I like Fridays for the Morning Pitt mailbag. Saturday is game day, so you got to like that. Sunday is, just kind of a day off and an NFL Sunday. And then we have Tuesdays right here. Oh, Wednesdays because we have the live stream at night. And then Tuesday right here where we recap Pat Narduzzi's Monday press conference. And this has become one of my favorite things to do each week. We started doing it this season on the Tuesday episode, just kind of breaking down 4 or 5 or 6 clips, however many I feel like talking about. Playing the clips for you during the Morning Pitt, the clips from the press conference yesterday, and talking about it because I think Narduzzi hits on some interesting topics. And I think that was the case again yesterday, whether we talked about Desmond Reed, the penalty issues, the noise at the Dome, or whatever else. Got into a bunch of different topics at yesterday's press conference. You can see that video right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And I'm going to break down a handful of those that really stood out to me here in the Tuesday edition of the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, Tuesday here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We recap Pat Narduzzi's press conference yesterday. Of course, we have the video posted here. We have the transcript online at Panther-Lair.com. A little bit of a delay getting things posted yesterday due to the Amazon Web Services outage, which affected us at 24/7 Sports. But we are back up and running, and you can check that all out right there at Panther-Lair.com. Let's dive into some of the things that stood out to me about Pat Narduzzi's press conference yesterday. Obviously, a lot of the focus was on the Syracuse game, what happened in that game, how Pitt got out of it with a 30-13 win that may or may not have felt as good as the final score indicated. I think the feeling all around is that for the most part, it did not feel as good as the final score indicated, although certainly there's an offense, defense, special team split, with the latter two having played really, really well and the former not doing so hot. But Pat Narduzzi was asked at one point during his press conference yesterday, does it say something about your team that it cannot, play maybe as well as you would like and still win on the road? Here's what Narduzzi said to that.
It tells you we find different ways to win. And I think that's huge. That's kind of the adversity. I mean, you put yourself in those positions, you don't want to be in it. And again, we beat them pretty handily when you look at the scoreboard. But it was a lot tighter as a coach as you sitting on the sideline. But our guys didn't look at the scoreboard. They didn't blink, as I said. And that's the impressive thing is our guys didn't panic. And to me, I like to win when we don't play good. Okay, think about that. If you don't play good on one side of the ball and you win, that's huge. And we would all been sick to our stomachs if we don't play well, we don't execute well on one side of the ball or the other, and you lose the game. So I think, Will, that's a fair question, and absolutely, if you said, I would rather have that than a BC game where you're up 48-0 or whatever. What do you find out about your team? We found out a lot about what kind of character we have in that room.
No, Pat Narduzzi, it would be better to have the game against Boston College when you're up 48-0 than to have a game like Saturday where it feels like it could slip away at any moment, or a game like the Louisville game or the West Virginia game where it did slip away. It would be, or even the Florida State game where it got a little bit closer than you probably would have liked. Even Narduzzi said, in that quote, talking about the Syracuse game, quote, "We beat them pretty handily when you look at the scoreboard, but it was a lot tighter as a coach when you're sitting on the sideline," end quote. Right. You would rather have the 48-0 blowout win than the close game, although I get what he's saying. Quote, "We found out a lot about what kind of character we have in that room." And I think they have found out a lot in these past couple weeks, really over the last 4 games, I would say. 4 games. Because I would go back to that Louisville game when, look, things, and I've said this a couple different times, and I'll probably keep pointing to that as a turning point in the season, not just for the change of quarterback, but for the fact that it felt like things were falling apart. It felt like the team was falling apart, and I don't think that's an exaggeration or just some hackneyed observation from the outside. I think things really were on the verge of falling apart. You make the quarterback change, they go out and get that 48-0 or 48-7 win at over Boston College, and now things are heading in a different direction. And what you've seen the last 2 weeks, and Narduzzi made this point a couple of times yesterday, the game at Florida State, maybe the defense didn't play so hot, gave up more big plays than they would have liked, even though I think overall was a pretty solid performance. They gave up enough big plays for Florida State to keep just stay in the game. And even Florida State was kind of running the ball well as you got through the end of the third quarter and into the fourth quarter. But the offense kept the foot on the gas, and the offense kept Pitt ahead, and the offense ultimately won that game. You get the flip of that script in the game at Syracuse, where the offense wasn't very good. They scored 2 touchdowns, and I think both were, pretty short fields. Both came after interceptions. They really couldn't do much otherwise. They, their longest drive was a 65-yard drive, and I think it still ended with a field goal. Just not a very good offensive performance, but the defense stepped up and made a lot of big plays and helped win that game. And then the fact that they did it as shorthanded and undermanned as they were is just even more remarkable. I think it's a testament to a lot of things, but it's a testament to the resilience of this team and how this team was able to, just battle and just dig deep for something that I think at a certain point they'd almost be forgiven for running out of it. You know what I mean? They'd almost be forgiven if, and I felt this, and I think I said it after the Florida State game, when Florida State was running the ball well at the end of the third quarter and then into the start of the fourth quarter before that fumble, that Shadarian Harrison forced fumble that Jasir Winnington recovered. I remember thinking at the time, all right, it looks like Florida State's kind of taken over this game. I think Pitt's lack of depth is finally catching up to them. They're just getting worn down. They're getting pushed around, and Florida State's probably going to win this thing. But you know what, man? Valiant effort. They tried really hard. They gave it everything they had. You can't feel too bad about this, but it's catching up to them. The lack of depth, particularly defensive end and linebacker, it's just catching up to them, and there's just not much more they can do here. Now, they end up stepping up and getting big plays and winning that game, pretty impressively. But they are on a bit of a thin line here with the depth of defense. And that's another thing that Pat Narduzzi was asked about yesterday. Said, how do you feel overall that some of those guys have worked, either linebacker, defensive end, whatever it might be, and how your depth has shown out there? Here's what Narduzzi said.
Depth has shown up. Now we'll see if it shows up this week, right? I think the better team you play, the better. We'll find out if it shows up this week. But hopefully we get a little bit healthier. But who knows? You got a week of practice to go. But it shows that our guys come out and execute. Our coaches have done a great job putting in position to execute. Tells you, our guys that they understand our defense, and whether they're the starter or whether they're the third team guy, they go in there and try to execute the best they can and play hard and play with effort. And that's what we've seen, whether it's our linebackers, our safeties, our corners. I mean, we've been banged up all season on defense for some reason. And our guys have stepped up, and we found a guy to put him. Like Shadarian Harrison didn't play at all. Again, he was a game time decision as well. So and I think he could have gone if we wanted to, but we were Sean Lee's playing well, and Taman and Rashad being back. It's just we go through these phases.
Yeah, the Shadarian Harrison thing was interesting. He was there. He was in uniform. Pat Narduzzi called him a game-time decision. He wasn't on the availability report. So actually, that's going to be a question. I don't want to give away all the goods, but we talk about that Thursday sit-down with Narduzzi. That's going to be one of my questions for that. The Thursday sit-down is, did you hear anything from the ACC about it? You have a player who was out but never showed up on the availability report. Pat Narduzzi referred to him as a game-time decision. Does the ACC come back to you and say, hey, this guy wasn't on your availability report, and now you're saying he was a game-time decision? What gives? And I'll be curious what Narduzzi has to say about that. But he might have admitted after the fact to several crimes, not the least of which was probably toying with the availability report, if that's what happened. But he made a few concessions yesterday that he probably doesn't want to have on the record. But, oh well. Hey, don't watch your iPad while you're driving, kids. But Pitt's depth, Shadarian Harrison didn't play, so they go with Sean Lee, Taman Lynham, and Rashad Battle. Battle and Lynham started the game. I think Sean Lee Jr. ended up playing the most snaps in the game of any of the cornerbacks. Obviously, Lynham got got an interception on that first drive, and the corners overall played really well. I mean, their numbers, like coverage numbers, were strong, really strong for the corners. Just looking at it real quick, Sean Lee Jr. was targeted 6 times, gave up 2 catches for a net total of 2 yards. Let's see. Lynham was targeted once and came down with an interception, and Battle was targeted once and gave up 1 catch for 7 yards. Now, this was not a good passing offense. Syracuse doesn't have a good situation with their passing game or with their offense overall. They're a better running team than a passing team, and that's not good when you're playing against Pitt's defense. Pitt's defense gets beat by good passing teams, and that certainly wasn't the case with Syracuse. But kudos to Pitt's defense playing, down all the defensive ends that they've been down. Shorter, a little more short-handed at defensive tackle because of the depth of defensive end where they moved Isaiah Neal outside. And then obviously the linebacker situation. No Rasheem Biles coming into it. Kyle Lewis leaving after like a dozen snaps. And they're out there with Nick Lappy and Cam Lindsey. And those guys end up playing more snaps in that game than they played in the first 6 games of the season combined, and they both end up leading the team in tackles with 7, and they both had 2 tackles for loss. So some big step-up performances out of Pitt's defensive depth. There is a question of how much longer they can do this. Like, at some point, you've got to get some of these starters back and play full games with Biles and Lewis and with Blaine Spires. Zach Crothers is out for the season, but like Jaden Moore at some point has to play here. Pitt needs him. And they haven't had him all season, and they haven't had Spires for a couple of games. They need to get some of these guys back because I just don't know how much longer you can keep going like this, missing so many of your key guys. One guy that they weren't technically missing on Saturday, but they kind of were missing was Desmond Reed. And, we talked about this in the post-game show. I think I probably talked about it yesterday. Desmond Reed played about 20 snaps. Pat Narduzzi said yesterday he played 23. Carried the ball 6 times. Did not have a target, let alone catch a pass. And this is a week after he was the ACC Receiver of the Week for catching 8 passes for 155 yards and 2 touchdowns at Florida State. He doesn't even get targeted on a pass. I kind of went through and looked at the stats. I forget if I said this yesterday. Of all the passing plays he was on the field for, and you look at his route participation and his, like when he ran routes on pass plays and when he blocked on pass plays, and it was like the lowest percentage of route participation in any game he's played since he got to Pitt. Like, since he's been at Pitt, he's been running tons of routes. Occasionally, maybe 2 or 3 times a game he would stay in and block. I think he stayed in to block 4 times at Syracuse on Saturday, and that was on a much lower snap count than what he's played in those other games. So much higher percentage of times when he stayed in to block. And so I asked Pat Narduzzi about it, because he stayed in to block, but he still ran some routes, but never got targeted. I think there are a lot of different ways you could look at it and things you could sort of assume. I thought I would take the easiest approach and just say, what did Syracuse do differently to take him away, and allow Narduzzi to speak on the topic of why Des Reed didn't get any targets in that game. And so that's what I asked. It was the first question of the press conference yesterday. I said, Des, limited snaps, but didn't have a single target. What was Syracuse doing to take him away? This is what Pat Narduzzi said.
Nothing really. I think it's just, with the play count, I think he was only on the field for 23 plays, so he wasn't on the field a whole bunch. Obviously came in as a game-time decision, and, we didn't get him to – we wanted him to play more. But we also had the plan of if he plays of just, not abusing him, okay? We it's a long season. We feel good with those other tailbacks as well. As we've spoken, you saw Boosie go down that sideline on the one that got called back. He's special as well. So we just want to have Des for a long period of time. Probably took too many snaps at Florida State, but gosh, you had to turn him loose. And we tried to be a little bit smarter because he didn't come out of that game as healthy as we wanted to. As I told you, he didn't practice on Tuesday, didn't practice on Wednesday. But we just didn't want to get into the, and again, I mentioned it before the Florida State game, but we just don't want to get to the point where he goes back to where he was 4 weeks ago. And but he's special, and we just got to be smart with him. And again, I think the one time we had a target to him, Mason ended up scrambling away. He should have just thrown it to him, and they peeled on him and took it away. And I think we ended up getting sacked on that play, where Mason should just, he's going to make somebody miss in space, even if the defender's right there. I trust Zero with the ball in his hand. He's going to catch it and he's going to make a play. But Mason got spooked out on it. But and I think it would have been a big, big pass reception for him. But again, what Syracuse did was put us behind the sticks. And we put ourselves behind the sticks as well. So we beat ourselves up on offense ourselves. It's what we did, not really as much of what they did schematically.
I mean, working backward there, he's talking about Syracuse. What Syracuse did was put us behind the sticks. We put ourselves behind the sticks as well. We beat ourselves on offense. It's what we did, not really as much of what they did schematically. I mean, if you're talking about the penalties, that doesn't affect Desmond Reed as a passing target. He needs to be a passing target, whether it's first down, second down, third down. I don't care if it's 3rd and 30, 1st and 5, whatever it might be. Desmond Reed should have a role as a receiving target. Working back from there, he talks about one time where Mason Heinchel should have thrown it to him, and he didn't, and he ended up taking a sack, but that's just one time. And working back from there, it really, you get an extended discussion about how they were trying to keep Desmond Reed healthy. Well, bro, if you want to keep Desmond Reed healthy, don't put him in the game. Like, if you're concerned enough about Desmond Reed's health that you're like, okay, we'll play him, but we really can't throw him the ball. Well, then you're not getting anything out of him unless you're using him as a decoy. Like, he's a playmaker. He's a guy who can make things happen for you. And if you feel like it's too much of a risk to put the ball in his hands, take him off the field. Like, take him off the field. Put Shadarian Turner out there, because Shadarian Turner can make plays. And this is not a slight on Desmond Reed. Like, I am 150% on board with the idea of getting him as healthy as possible. But if you're going to put him on the field, you can't play with 10. Like, you need him. Yeah, he's one of your, 5 of eligible receivers, or 6 eligible receivers if you want to include the quarterback. You can't short yourself, no pun intended, you can't short yourself a potential receiving option by putting a guy out there that you feel like it's too much of a risk to throw the ball to him. I mean, that's something he's really, really good at, and we saw that a week ago, how good he is at that. And there had to have been situations on Saturday night when he could have helped them, when he could have made more plays in the passing game, and they didn't throw it to him. And if it's because they were concerned about health, they were limiting his touches, okay, I get that. But don't put him on the field then. Like, don't put him on the field. If you want to wait until he's healthier or there's less risk, okay. Don't put him out there. Go with Turner, go with Goff, and save up, Reed for games where you feel like you might need him more, whether it's NC State this week or Georgia Tech or Notre Dame, whatever it might be. But if you're going to put him on the field, then you have to have some level of trust that you can give him the ball and let him make plays, because that's what he's really good at. Anyway, I mean, you do need to get him healthy, though, because you do need him healthy for the next 5 games. There's no question about that. And I think Desmond Reed is a warrior. I think you go to battle with that guy every chance you get. And I think he will put himself on the field every opportunity he gets. Maybe you need to protect him from himself a little bit, which again, that's fine. Keep him off the field. Put guys out there that you will throw the ball to, you will hand it off to more than 6 times. All right. Obviously one of the big issues for Pitt's offense was the penalties. Tons of penalties. They had 5, I think, pre-snap or procedure penalties, maybe 6, including the one that was declined. After not having any pre-snap or procedure penalties on offense in the previous 2 starts with Mason Heinchel. What changed? What was so different? Why did Kendall Stanley get 4 false starts? Why did they have the illegal motion and illegal shift and 5 players in the backfield and all this stuff? What was going on up there? Why was Pitt subject to this? And I think I put together a couple quotes on this one. I might have spliced two together, but it's both discussions of the same topic. What happened? Why did Pitt's offense get so sloppy pre-snap at the Dome?
And offensively, we didn't play very good, as you could see. And you go back and watch a videotape, it's different than you felt on game day, like what's going on. I obviously did a poor job of preparing our offense for that game. I think the noise was a lot more than Florida State. It's been a while since we've been up there. We won't make that mistake again. But we played, we practiced with a lot of noise, but it was just different. And we didn't respond well. I think we got a little bit frazzled and started to do stuff that again, it was noisy. And like I said, I'll put that on me. It's not Kendall's fault. I'll blame myself. I just didn't have it loud enough, I guess. Maybe we should have gone to a silent cadence, I guess. But it was, talking to those guys, it was a lot louder than, I want to say practice, but it was a lot louder than it was the week before Florida State. You're in the Dome. But if you didn't see it the week before, we really haven't had a problem with it. It's a one-game thing. It's is it a lack of focus? I know Kendall talked about I was starting to thought maybe I should peek at the ball and then peek at my guy, and I'm like don't start doing things in a game that you really haven't done in practice. You got to practice that stuff. So I think it's a young guy that's and again maybe he's not a young guy, a guy that's playing Power 4 football in an atmosphere like that for the first time, and it just maybe got him a little bit more, but he won't have that problem this week.
So Pat Narduzzi is saying that an announced attendance of 40,000 at the Dome was louder than an announced attendance of 65,000 at Doak Campbell Stadium in Tallahassee. I'm pretty sure, and my only hesitation with this is that he didn't come right out and say it, but it sure feels like a Pat Narduzzi throwing shade at something situation here, like probably implying without saying as much that Syracuse was piping in noise, because that's the kind of thing he would imply, and that's the kind of thing he would talk about. And when he's sort of marveling at it, I don't know, it's just maybe we just didn't have it loud enough at practice. It was louder than it was in Florida State. I just didn't have them with enough noise out there. Like I say, the only reason he might, how would I say this? The only reason I could convince myself that he wasn't saying Syracuse was piping in crowd noise is because I'm pretty sure he would have come right out and said it. He doesn't usually pull any punches on things like that. But the way he was sort of dancing around that topic, I don't know, felt Narduzzi-esque to, that somebody's out to get him. There's a conspiracy theory. There's big brother, big air conditioning. No, what is it now? It's not Carrier Dome. It's JMA Wireless. Big Wireless is out there messing with you. But, that was weird. I don't know why Kendall Stanley had such an issue with it. Nobody else did. But obviously that's something they'll need to clean up. Crowd noise should not be a problem this weekend. What will be a problem this weekend is the NC State Wolfpack. NC State's coming to Pitt on Saturday for a 3:30 kickoff at Acrisure Stadium. The Wolfpack haven't been here since COVID. I think COVID was the last time Pitt played NC State at all. Am I right about that? I should know this off the top of my head. I'll look it up while we're listening to this next clip. Oh, I have my media guide right here. See, this is good preparation, but at least I have it close. North Carolina State. Yeah, they haven't. Pitt hasn't played NC State since COVID, and that was only the second time they played them as members of the ACC. Both previous games, 2017 and 2020, were in Pittsburgh, so they have yet to play at NC State as a member of the conference. They did play there in 2009. You might remember that, the Russell Wilson game, where Mick Williams was just so good that he forced Russell Wilson out of the pocket before the defensive ends could even set the edge. One of the only losses that season. Pitt was 10-3 in 2009. One of their losses was at NC State. But I digress. We're talking about the 2025 NC State Wolfpack, and Pat Narduzzi thinks they're pretty good. As a matter of fact, here's all the times he said he used some sort of superlative while talking about NC State yesterday.
But to beat this North Carolina State football team, which is the most talented football team that we will have played to date, I can guarantee you that they are the most talented. They're well coached. Hollywood is really good. Their tailback is special. Best tailback we faced to this time, this point. One of the top 2 leading receivers, as well as he's a bounce runner. He's got speed. He's as close to a guy like Desmond Reid that we'll face this year so far, at least. This will be the best set of defensive ends that we will have faced as well. The one defensive end, Harsh, I believe his name is, Sebastian Harsh is, and the clone is on the other side. Those are the 2 best defensive ends we'll face this year so far. Our tackles will have to play really good to have a chance to throw the football at all, and obviously in the run game. They're good versus a run, and they're good versus a pass. They're not just pass rushers.
Yeah, that's a whole lot. The most talented football team we have played to date, the best tailback we've faced to this point, the best set of defensive ends we've faced, the 2 best defensive ends we'll have faced this year so far. Pat Narduzzi with a lot of kind words for the NC State Wolfpack, who are 4-3 overall, 1-2 in the ACC. They did have a win over Virginia that did not count. That was a non-conference game. And then they beat Wake Forest, lost at Duke, and lost to Virginia Tech. Most recently, 2 weeks ago, they lost at Notre Dame 36-7. As to all of those highly touted players that Pat Narduzzi pointed out, Hollywood Smothers, also known as Hollywood Smoothie, or Holiday Smoothie, I believe is what Pat Narduzzi said. That's a new one. In my fantasy football league, we've taken to calling Mike Evans Milk Ovens, and I can't even remember. We've done it for so long that I can't even remember why we called him Milk Ovens. But he's on my team, so I was watching him, last night as they played against the Lions. But Hollywood Smothers, maybe that'll change to Holiday Smoothie. But anyway, Hollywood Smothers is the leading rusher in the ACC with 739 yards. He's averaging 105.6 per game, 6.6 yards per carry. He's got 5 touchdowns. As for the Narduzzi actually mentioned some other players for NC State, but as far as the pass rushers, not quite as productive for NC State. Their 2 leaders, the 2 defensive ends, Travali Price and Sebastian Harsh, are 18th and 19th. They're actually tied for 18th. Actually tied for 17th in the ACC in sacks per game. They each have 2.5 sacks over the course of 7 games, which, that's solid production, and I'll take Narduzzi's word for it that those guys are really good at rushing the passer. Obviously, that's going to be a big challenge this week after Pitt gave up 7 sacks last week. Now, I think a decent amount of that came up the middle. That pressure was kind of coming right in Mason Heinschel's face. We'll see if if defensive ends are able to collapse the outside of the pocket, if push the pocket, if he's able to run up the middle and escape. My guess is that NC State will try to do what Syracuse did, bring that pressure, bring it up the middle, try to contain him and make it unpleasant or unideal for him or less appealing for him to take off and run. And then we'll see if they're effective with it. We'll see if Desmond Reed and the running backs can be outlet passes. We'll see if the tight ends can be a factor. We'll see if, we'll see if the wide receivers keep up their strong play. I think, the last few weeks with Mason Heinschel, these guys have been playing well. Kenny Johnson had a career game in the Boston College game. Raphael Williams caught 6 passes in the Florida State game. Kenny Johnson had a couple nice plays. Raphael Williams had a couple nice plays in the Syracuse game. So the receivers seem to be working well with Mason Heinschel, and it'll all come down to Heinschel's, how Heinschel plays, because that's what it always comes down to, how the quarterback plays. And also, if Pitt could get a few guys back on defense, that would probably help. All right, love doing that. Hopefully you enjoyed it as well. If you have any thoughts, share them right here on YouTube. And then, of course, over at the website, Panther-Lair.com, which My hope is that it will not break today because we need a full day of message boarding. So we'll see you on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. Listen, make sure you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You never miss any of our Pitt video content. Don't forget to get a mailbag question in on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. We'll put that post up today. But thanks for watching the video today. Hope your week got off to a great start yesterday. Hope you have a great Tuesday. We'll catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.